Hello everyone, this is Dr. David Russell Mosley, sometimes known as the Enchanted Pipe Smoker here. I'm coming to you on a lovely, albeit slightly noisy thanks to the birds, day here in Spokane, Washington. I wanted to make a video today because it's been a while since I've sat down and made a video of any kind. And also I just wanted to share some things with you today. Those of you who especially started following me first as kind of pipe smoking content and so on, the channel's shifted in a lot of ways in terms of what its content is about. It's not to say I'm uninterested in pipes or pipe smoke, and you'll have to forgive the shaking there. That was my dog running into the table. But, especially ever since I started writing poetry and getting it published and so on, that's been more the direction that this channel's taken. And I think, by and large, it's the direction that this channel will take from here on out. One reason was just I haven't made a video in a while, and I thought it might be good to do so. But the other is, I actually had another book of poetry come out recently, and I haven't really talked about it very much. Life has been so busy these last few months, not least because I was appointed headmaster at the Chesterton Academy of Spokane, or Chesterton Academy of Notre Dame in Spokane. And so I've been doing that alongside all of my normal teaching duties for the rest of this year, that it's just been crazy. I wanted to make a video, talk about poetry a little bit, read some of my poems from my new book, and just talk about how these things kind of all fit together for me. But first, I'm going to help my pipe out a little bit here. Forgive my dog. And all the neighborhood dogs. It's just a loud day today. So, the pipe smoking side of things, I'm smoking a new pipe here. It's a Mr. Brogue's pipe. You can see the symbol there. I won this along with a really nice nautical themed table and a copy of one of my own books at an auction recently for my children's school. So out here smoking this, I'm smoking in it tobacco called Hobbit's Weed that I picked up at my local tobacconist, Tobacco World here in Spokane. Great place to buy pipe tobacco, by the way, and other pipe related things if you're in Spokane. Now, many of you are already familiar with my first book of poetry, The Green Man, which came out last June, and was really the first time I sat down and, thanks to the encouragement of some friends, put together all of these poems that I had been writing into a collection. But the collection was a little haphazard. It was just, I happened to have a bunch of nature poetry and wanted to put that together somehow into a collective whole. But now I'm very pleased to say that I have my second collection of poetry, Liturgical Entanglements. And this one was written with much more of a kind of straightforward, intentional view in mind. I wrote this book with an eye towards wanting to write a poetry collection about the church calendar. And so it started as just, okay, I'm going to write 7 poems for each of the seasons of the Roman Catholic Church calendar, which is the standard calendar for any kind of liturgical churches in the West. So if you're, a Lutheran, an Anglican, even a Presbyterian, you'll be familiar with things like Advent and Lent and things like that. And so that's how it started, right? It was with a desire to write a book that looked to those things. And so originally it was 7 sonnets. The only form I use in this collection is the sonnet. 7 sonnets and 10 sections. So there's a section for Advent, Christmas, Lent, Easter, Ordinary Time, and now I'm already forgetting my own. Yeah, Advent, Christmas, Lent, Easter, and Ordinary Time. Right. So the idea was it was a 50 or a, what would that be, 35, whatever it was, poems total. And then I started writing other poems that I felt like fit in with it. I wrote a whole series on the Stations of the Cross, which I've shared on this channel before. I wrote poems for every mystery of the Rosary, of the Roman Catholic version of the Rosary. You know, and it just kind of kept building up. Now, to my mind, there's something very much related for me between smoking a pipe and prayer and liturgy and things like that. Because liturgy, right, in its kind of broadest understanding, it's an organized way to pray throughout the year, throughout the week, and, you know, throughout the day. And so in the Catholic Church, you know, we've got the church calendar to cover the year. We've got, you know, the Mass on Sunday to kind of blade out into the week. And then we've got daily prayer and these, the liturgy of the hours. And to me, there's you know, there's a rhythm to all of that. And it's so very similar to me about the rhythm of preparing a pipe to smoke. You know, it's something that takes time. You know, you've got to think about preparing your pipe. You've got to make sure that you've got time. If you're like me and you only smoke outside, or if you only smoke in certain parts of your house or whatever, you've got to think about, where am I going to do this? Is that place prepared for me to be in it? You know, in my case, is it nice enough to go outside? And so there's so much thought. And then there's the packing, right? Whether you use the 3-pinch method or you use the swirl method I've seen before, where you pile up the amount in your hand and then swirl your pipe around and put it in there. There's a rhythm there. There's the char light. There's the second light. There's smoking it at the right rhythm so that it doesn't go out too fast or too soon, like or doesn't burn up too much, right? Or doesn't go out like mine has. There's a ritual. There's almost a liturgy that goes into all of this, and that's what I see as related between pipe smoking and Christian prayer. And then I think poetry is bound up in all of that as well. That there's a rhythm, right? Whether you've done it intentionally or not. There's a rhythm, there's a meter, there is a plan. Even if you're writing the most freest of free verse, you've got some kind of plan of how you want to lay it out, of what you want to happen. When you write a sonnet, which is the form that I've kind of come to write the most of, you've got just 14 lines. That's it. You've got 14 lines to say what you want to say. And so you've got a particular rhyme scheme, right? Whether you're kind of inventing a new one or you're using some of the established forms, you've got a scheme that you're trying to stick with. And so all of these things, it's this intentionality, right? It's this care that for me draws my hobby of pipe smoking, my hobby of writing poetry, and my life of Christian prayer together. And so, you know, that's I think why I've come to do all of these things simultaneously. That, you know, I smoke a pipe, I write poetry, I talk about these things, because I think that they unfold for us things about reality. And honestly, at the end of the day, that's what I think poetry is about. It's making reality more real. Right? It's showing us the deeper truths, the kind of deeper magic behind words and the world. And so I thought what I'd do now is I'd share a couple of poems with you from both collections. For the pipe smokers amongst you, I'm going to start with a couple of poems specifically about smoking pipes, which both, or at least include smoking pipes, and both of those are found in my collection, The Green Man. So the first is a poem called Smoking a Pipe on a Cool Afternoon. I actually wrote this, as I did most of these poems, back in New Hampshire. And I wrote this one in particular while sitting in a tobacconist called Castro's back room, where they've got great selections of tobacco. There's one in Concord and one in Manchester. Those are the only ones I'm familiar with. There might be more out in New Hampshire, but if you're ever in Concord or Manchester, you find Castro's back room, and they've got great walk-in humidor, great selections of pipe tobacco, and a great little area to sit and smoke. And so I was sitting there smoking and reading some of the poetry of Samuel Taylor Coleridge and came up with this poem. So this is Smoking a Pipe on a Cool Afternoon. Like Celtic knots, the smoke unfurls and gives the air an illuminated quality. Breathed in, blown out, it dies and then it lives. It gives the room a kind of sublimity. The cherry heart comes from fire, but air keeps the fire alive. A balance must be struck. Calm, deliberate like prayer, the fire must be fanned. Give in to trust and let the smoke like incense rise in rings, in swirls and curls like kells now come to life. And see how like a thurible it sings of a world with airish spirits, rife with things unseen and so unheard of, whole. All this and more pours from the poet's bowl. So yeah, that's a poem where I try to get in certain ideas about smoke and the use of smoke even in prayer, right? That it was such a common part of prayer for the ancient Israelites and remains part of the liturgy, certain liturgies anyway, in the Catholic Church and many liturgies in, say, the Orthodox Church and other places. And so I wanted to get at what I saw, right, in the smoke as it rose. The next poem, and the last one from this particular collection that I want to read, is one I wrote about a writing group I used to have back in Nottingham when we lived in England for a few years, where this channel started, back in Nottingham. And there I had started a writing group amongst the other theology PhDs, which I ended up naming Theologica Bibens et Fumigens, or Theological Drinking and Smoking. We met at a pub, the Crown Inn in Beeston, and about every other week we'd come together with portions of our dissertations or articles that we were working on or other things, and we'd sit outside in their beautiful beard garden, even in winter because they had these great heaters in the covered part of the beer garden. We'd sit out there with our beers and our pipes, and we'd read to one another, and there's a lot of Inklings cosplay, I think, that went on in that group, but it was a great opportunity for us to gather together and to encourage one another as we worked on these massive books that were our dissertations. And so this is my poem to the TBF, which is what I usually referred to us as. We gather round the wooden table, all ready to uncover the mysteries divine. These holy mysteries on which we dine are our food. The inn provides our glasses tall for beer or cider, but for whiskey small. Pipes lovingly, liturgically incline us to our topics for the day. We shine with smiles, with eyes made bright by light eternal. But the bells and bustle call us back to life. We pack our things, prepare ourselves to leave, our holy pipes expire, our glasses empty, and we return to home, to love, to strife. For none can live in ether lest they cleave to air under the stars, to air sublunary. In that poem, you can see some of my thoughts about pipe smoking as a kind of liturgical act come out, as well as some of my interest in medieval cosmology. And the perhaps the self-importance with which we thought of what we were doing. I want to turn now to my new book, right, Liturgical Entanglements. As I said, this one was written with a very clear plan in mind that just expanded as time went. But the plan was very much for it to be a collection that took seriously the notion that poetry is, or at least can be, prayerful. And so I wanted to provide something for myself and hopefully something for others as an aid to prayer. And so this book is the kind of what came out of that. And so what I thought I'd do is I'll read a couple of poems out of this one. The first poem I'll read is the very first poem in the book. And really it's the title poem, Liturgical Entanglement. And really this whole collection started with that title. That title came to my mind, and I thought, oh, what a beautiful title for a collection of poetry about the church year. But then I wanted it to be more than just a title. I wanted a poem that looked at what does it mean to be entangled liturgically. And so hopefully you can see some of what this poem tries to do. Time has been entangled with the eternal, spiraling from winter into spring, and even from the plains of Lent it brings us into Easter, green and vernal. It has spun me, bound me, turned me all from individual moments moving to an eternal now, a present that sings the past, the present, the future as one in all. Then the bells ring, the incense clears, the present moves again with the ticking of the clock. It brings me back to myself from beyond the stars. Once caught in liturgical entanglement, I cannot allow moving time to block the holy song of the 9 heavenly choirs. One of the things about the Catholic, and I use that term broadly to refer both to Roman Catholics, to the Orthodox. Forgive my dog, she's very desperate to see the dogs next door, and they're not out to play right now. But it's our belief that in the liturgy, time and the eternal really do mix together. They become entangled. Eternity comes down, and yet we continue to experience things in a linear fashion, the way that we're accustomed to. And that's honestly one of the things that drew me to Catholicism in the first place, is this notion that these different spheres, these different dimensions, not only ought to be reunited, but are at special moments throughout the year, and happen actually regularly, in a sense, every Sunday. And we so often don't behave that way. We don't behave like in the Mass time in the eternal meet. And I know some will say, well, that's because of Vatican II and the new liturgy and all these things, and I disagree. I think that just as many extraordinary form or Latin Mass attendees get mixed up in modernity and forget what's really happening just as often as those of us who attend the English Mass do. But we can remember, right? We can live that out more fully. And that's a lot of what my poetry in general is trying to do, is to live out these deeper realities more fully. Now, since it's Eastertide, I thought it might be appropriate to share a couple of my Easter poems. So as I said, these poems all follow throughout the church year, and then various prayers and things like that. So this is my first poem in the Easter section of the book. And it's entitled simply Arise. Arise, arise and meet the risen one. The sun is dawning on the newest day. Death has lost, the devil has not won. The dead seed is now a tree come out to play. The week has been rewritten and now ends on the day God said, "Let there be light." The light has been unveiled and eternally sends the radiance of joy to those lost in the night. The first is now the eighth eternal present, and its light shall never be put out. But we only see in part, like the lunar crescent. Our sight is dimmed by our fear and doubt. But today, we know that death has been defeated, and the King is on his throne. In peace, he's seated. One of the other themes of, the main theme of Easter is resurrection, right? New life. But it's also meant to be for us a reminder that there is an even newer life yet to come when Christ returns and all things are made new. And so I wrote a poem that shows, I hope anyway, what that's meant to look like, not just from our perspective, but from the perspective of the rest of creation, especially as seen here in the earth. And so this is my poem, Recreation. The once dead earth is coming back to life. We see the first fruits rising from the ground. We hear the music of the birds whose flight signals that the land is no longer drowned. Drinking deep of this life-giving water, the means of death has caused new life to be. Life from death, and joy comes with it after. Death and decay have gone into the sea. And the sun now rises more golden than before. The moon and stars more luminous and bright. All we have to do is open up the door and not allow ourselves to fear the night. For there is one who knocks at the door for us, and he breathes life into the meanest dust. And I want to end my poetry reading with just the last poem, actually, of the book. As I was putting this collection together and had placed Liturgical Entanglements not in any of the seasons, but at the very beginning, I thought perhaps it'd be good to end with a kind of benediction. And so the last poem is called Ite Missa Est. I actually first became familiar with the phrase when I was reading Charles Williams' Taliesin through Logers. It's the words that Lancelot says at the end of the Mass that he celebrates. And it's the words that are said at the end of the Mass in Latin. And in a sense, you could kind of translate it as in, like, go forth, you are sent, or behold, you are sent, something along those lines. And it is this notion that the Mass ends with a going out, right? That it's an exitus and a reditus, right? You take what happens in the Mass, the transformations that happen, the transfigurations that happen in the Mass, and you take them out into the week and into the world with you. And then you come back, right, into the Mass, and there's this breathing, right, this ebb and flow that's meant to go on. And so I thought I'd end my own book with a kind of sending forth. So this is my poem, Ite Missa Est. Go forth, for now this book is at an end. Let us give thanks for what we have received. I pray that I have been God's faithful friend and give my work to the God I have believed. We must receive the gift and understand that we are sent to the world, to rocks and trees, and birds and fish and animals on land. We must go out and take the gospel story of God made man who died and rose for us, defeating death by death and bringing glory, the Holy Spirit, who makes our lives more porous. Go forth, for now this book is at an end. and find the garden you were called to tend. I hope you've enjoyed these poems and some of my thoughts on them. I'm hoping to get back to writing a little bit more regularly, so please do check out my website, davidrussellmosley.com, to see more regular things from me there. I'm also hoping to make videos a little bit more regularly, especially now that the weather's getting nicer and my school year is starting to wrap up. We have 4 weeks left to go. 4 weeks. I'm hoping that I can start making a little bit more content, getting out here a little bit more often. It's easiest for me to film outside, not least because it's easiest for me to smoke outside. But I hope you enjoyed this. If you're interested in buying any of my works, you can buy both collections of poetry. In fact, all of my books are available on Amazon. I am out of signed copies of The Green Man, but I still have some signed copies of Liturgical Entanglements left. So if you go to my website, again, that's davidrussellmosley.com, you can get a copy there, and you can sign up to order a copy there. And if you want to see me keep making content, please make sure that you like and subscribe and all those things that YouTube people are supposed to make. Neighbors have very barky dogs. I do too. But yeah, make sure that you like and subscribe. And if you want to help me out in making things besides buying my books, one of the other things that you can do is buy me a beer at buymeacoffee.com. I'll put links to all these things down in the description below. God bless you all. My pipe-smoking friends. When you sit in peace with your pipes, think of me. And to the rest of you, I hope that you find your garden, right? Find the place you are called to live and serve. Until next time, God bless.